There's a shift happening that few people want to acknowledge because it goes against everything we've been taught about what success should look like. For generations, the message was drilled into men: work hard, climb the ladder, make money. And once you've made it, the natural next step is marriage, kids, and a big house with a white picket fence. That was the end goal, the ultimate reward for all your effort. But now, something different is happening. Men who actually reach those heights, the ones who have spent years grinding, sacrificing, and giving everything they have to their careers and ambitions, are starting to look at that so-called reward and realize it doesn't look as appealing as they were told. They see marriage not as the prize at the end of the road, but as a gamble with odds stacked against them. They understand that in today's culture, the old rules no longer apply. The market for relationships has changed beyond recognition, and the idea of settling down no longer carries the same security or meaning it once did. These men aren't bitter, and they aren't running from love. What they are doing is choosing clarity over illusion. They've seen too many of their peers lose everything they built because they tied their fortunes and freedom to someone else's emotions. They've noticed how quickly admiration can turn into entitlement, how respect can fade once comfort takes over, and how loyalty is often not rewarded in the way society tells men it will be. To a man who has spent decades building something from nothing, the idea of risking it all on one person's shifting feelings feels less like romance and more like reckless abandonment of common sense. And that's the new reality most people don't want to face. The men who reach the top quickly realize that the very qualities that made them successful are the same ones that allow them to see through the illusion of what society calls security. Ambition, discipline, focus, and self-sufficiency gave them the ability to build wealth and status, but those traits also help them recognize the risks of attaching everything they've built to a legal contract that doesn't protect them. They've watched other men walk into marriage with good intentions, full of generosity and commitment, only to find themselves in court years later being stripped of half their assets, their homes, and sometimes even their children. And the painful part is that these outcomes rarely happen because those men were unfaithful or abusive. More often, it comes down to something far less dramatic: boredom, dissatisfaction, or the simple feeling that a woman could do better. That's all it takes for the years of sacrifice to be erased, for the man to go from provider to villain in her story. What makes this even harder to accept is the way passion naturally fades once a relationship becomes bound by law. In the beginning, attraction thrives on tension, mystery, and the pursuit. But once she feels secure, once she knows she doesn't have to earn his attention anymore, that fire often begins to die. Comfort replaces challenge, predictability replaces excitement, and the man who once inspired admiration becomes the man she takes for granted. For a man who has worked too hard to become exceptional, that shift is devastating because it undermines the very dynamic that created the attraction in the first place. He sees clearly that in today's world, marriage doesn't guarantee love, it often guarantees obligation. And obligation is the fastest way to kill desire. For the man who has already built a life of wealth, purpose, and status, staying single isn't about avoiding love, it's about protecting the freedom he fought so hard to earn. Most men chase relationships because they're searching for validation, companionship, or a sense of meaning. But a man who has reached the top already has those things in other forms. His work, his accomplishments, and his lifestyle give him a deep sense of satisfaction. He doesn't wake up hoping someone will complete him because he already feels complete. That changes the entire equation. Relationships to him are no longer about filling a void. They're about adding to an already abundant life. And if they threaten to subtract more than they add, he has no reason to stay. This clarity gives him something most men never experience: genuine choice. He can travel when he wants, where he wants, without having to negotiate. He can pursue business moves without the weight of someone else's fears or insecurities holding him back. He can walk away from drama without the crushing consequences of divorce courts, custody battles, or financial ruin. The freedom he protects isn't just about money or lifestyle, it's about maintaining full control over his time, energy, and decisions. That autonomy is priceless because it's the very thing that allowed him to rise in the first place. And once you've lived life on your own terms, it's almost impossible to willingly surrender that for a promise of security that is often one-sided. He knows that what's presented as stability often means sacrifice for him and leverage for her. So when he chooses to stay single, it's not a rejection of intimacy, but a recognition that nothing is worth giving up the control that keeps him truly alive. What most people fail to see is that these men often enjoy stronger and more passionate connections with women than many who are traditionally committed. The reason is simple: they never hand over complete control. In a typical relationship, once the man is locked in, the dynamic shifts. A woman who once went out of her way to impress him often relaxes into comfort, knowing she has security. But with a man who refuses to give up his independence, that comfort never fully arrives. She knows that his attention, while available, is never guaranteed. She understands that to remain in his life, she must continue to bring her best self, her femininity, her respect, her charm, because he will not tolerate complacency. This doesn't mean he plays games or manipulates. It means his life is already full, and she is a part of it, not the whole of it. His time is divided between his pursuits, his goals, and his passions, and that balance keeps him attractive. Women feel the difference instantly. They can sense when a man's interest is optional instead of desperate, and that awareness ignites a deeper level of respect and desire. His independence makes him magnetic because it proves he cannot be owned. Unlike many men who dull their edge by giving up everything for stability, he maintains the unpredictability that women are naturally drawn to. Some days he's fully engaged and attentive, and other days he's consumed by his own pursuits, leaving her wondering about him. That mystery isn't a performance, it's the byproduct of a life driven by purpose. And paradoxically, this dynamic is what keeps attraction alive for longer than traditional commitment ever could. By refusing to be tamed, he ensures that the spark never fades. By the time these men reach their 40s, 52nds, and beyond, the criticism aimed at them grows louder, not quieter. Society struggles to accept that a man can live without a wife or children and still feel complete. People invent stories to explain it away, claiming he must be secretly miserable, afraid of intimacy, or emotionally broken, because admitting the truth would force them to question their own choices. Married men who sacrifice their freedom often mask their envy with judgment, while women frustrated by his refusal to commit label him selfish or emotionally unavailable. But none of this changes reality. He isn't missing out, he's thriving. What makes him different is that he's cracked a code others ignore. He knows women are most drawn to men who choose them, not men who need them. His relationships work because they are built on voluntary desire, not on legal contracts or social pressure. The time he spends with women feels electric because it's chosen, not forced. There's no dull obligation dragging things down, no resentment growing under the surface. Every interaction is fresh because she knows he could walk away at any moment, and that awareness keeps her invested in a way most marriages cannot replicate. The longer he lives this way, the more obvious the rewards become. While many of his peers sink into midlife crises or bitter divorces, he continues to expand his wealth, refine his health, and deepen his sense of purpose. His gray hair becomes distinguished, his experience gives weight to his presence, and his confidence is simply who he is, not an act. And because he never surrendered control over his own life, his desirability doesn't fade with age. Instead, it grows. He remains proof that a man can have freedom, women, and fulfillment all at once if he never gives that freedom away.